Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open in the near future with a team of scientists developing the ultimate weapon. Dr. Joe Buchanan has built a laser with the power of a black hole that causes whatever it's fired at to disappear. As a byproduct, his invention has created rifts that have been opening up around the city and causing people to vanish. Joe says they wanted a world-ending weapon, so there you go, then leaves work quicker than you can say the apocalypse. He gets around in a self-driving car that looks like it was made out of RoboCop and has an artificially intelligent dashboard.
I am tracking intruders on your property.
The news reports on the death of the last rainforest when Joe arrives home to children holding a funeral of their own. A young girl is burying her old bike after receiving a newer model when Joe's like, oh crap, that storm I caused is getting worse. He tries to get them inside when a Mongolian warrior from the past gallops through the rift and tries to attack them. He hurls his spear at Joe, who's coincidentally responsible for everything, but the rift pulls it back inside along with the rider. Even Joe becomes one of the missing persons numbers as he wakes up in Switzerland 1817 alongside his car from the future. He isn't able to access the internet because there aren't any satellites, so hides the vehicle in an abandoned shack. Joe then walks to the nearest town that he sees in the distance and on the way passes some mutilated sheep in the forest. Arriving at a tavern just before the sun goes down, the bartender accepts a ring as barter, and now Joe has some money for this time period. Approaching another doctor to read the date on the newspaper, Joe introduces himself to Victor Frankenstein, who immediately notices the digital watch. He doesn't freak out and try to burn him like a witch or anything, and is simply impressed that Joe has found a way to put electricity into something so small. We learn from the bartender that Victor's 6-year-old brother was killed recently and a trial is to be held for his nanny, who's suspected of the murder. Joe claims to have heard of the doctor's work, but Victor says that he must be mistaken because nobody has yet. He then leaves, so Joe jumps on the back of his carriage and follows to where the coach driver pulls over in the middle of the woods. Joe watches from the shadows as Victor argues with his creation about making it a bride, but he slips on some rocks and is knocked unconscious. Waking up in the morning, Joe returns to his car and tells it to figure out a way that they can go back to the future. He then parks it outside of town in some bushes and follows Victor to a courtroom for the trial of the nanny. Justine is being accused of murder, but Victor's brother was crushed to death, so unless this girl has some hidden muscles, it was clearly the monster. The farmer whose sheep were killed vouches for the innocent girl and brought along evidence of the real killer, but spills dirt on the footprint. He's taken away because Justine was found with the young boy's locket, so she must have murdered him and not found it like she claims. She's sentenced to be executed while the 50-year-old time traveler makes a move on an attractive 18-year-old girl in the audience. Mary Shelley's the author of Frankenstein but won't publish it until the following year and leaves when the trial concludes. Victor sends his wife Elizabeth away in a carriage before walking into the woods, so Joe continues following him around. This time he's captured by the monster who was promised a bride by Victor the last time they met, but he brought along a gun instead. He tries to destroy his creation, who has no concept of murder and only killed Victor's brother by accident. The monster says he's going to kill Elizabeth if he doesn't get a companion, then before Vic can take another shot runs off into the woods. Joe tells Victor that he knows about his work and implores him to come forward and reveal the truth to save the innocent girl. Frankenstein has got it in his head that he's unable to sin because everything he does is for the betterment of humanity. Joe shows off his car as, I guess, a way to demonstrate who's smarter, but Frank's just as impressed with the engineering of the ballpoint pen. He immediately believes everything Joe says and writes a letter to Elizabeth, which he assumes to be something about the innocent girl. When Joe delivers it, however, it's simply a warning for her to leave town, as Victor's only worry is that his monster may harm her. Joe decides to ask for Mary's help and drives to the Shelley estate, where another rift is opening up in the sky above. Lord Byron threatens to shoot the trespasser, but Joe pretends to be an admirer who's only come to show him his latest invention. The poet's impressed with binoculars, so lets him meet with Mary and her future husband Percy, who she'll eventually receive the Shelley name from. For now she's Mary Godwin, and says that she practices free love with both of these writers as a nice way to put it. Speaking of rifts, Percy philosophizes that the one above his house is a gateway to another dimension, but Joe don't care. He's just come for Mary, but upon realizing that she hasn't learned about the monster yet, he leaves her to continue getting bookended by the famous writers. Joe rushes to the gallows in the town center to save Justine, but he isn't able to take on everyone and they just carry him away. The innocent girl is hanged for the crime of finding a young boy's locket in a field while the mob throw Joe into the lake. We get a blurry dream sequence of Joe with blackface torturing himself, reminding us that he's the real cause of all this. He suddenly wakes up on the shore with Mary right in his face as she saw the villagers hurl him into the lake and wants some answers. Instead of just saying that he assumed she was writing a story because she lives with two writers or something, Joe says screw the space-time continuum. He shows Mary his talking car, then proceeds to drive her around Switzerland, to the locals' confusion as that carriage ain't got no horses. Joe even shows her a copy of her next book that'll be printed in every language on Earth alongside her future husband's name. She's a lot calmer than you'd think even when being told that Joe came here through what Mary calls Percy's cloud. The old man then sleeps with the teenager in about the most unsexy encounter you could write, and this is the last time we see her. Mary's just here for a love interest side plot and chooses not to become involved, so Joe must stop Dr. Frankenstein on his own. He rolls up to Victor's workshop in the middle of the night where the doctor says that he must make his monster a bride before he kills Elizabeth. He wants Joe's help with gathering electricity, but what he doesn't know is that his wife has returned from Geneva. She's had her coach driver take her to Victor's, but they get run down by the monster who's over waiting for a bride. He causes her to fall from the carriage but is quite cordial about murdering her because he knows that she'll be resurrected soon. The monster rips open Elizabeth's chest when Joe and Victor hear the scream, so come running to find his wife's lifeless body. The villagers arrive and blame the outsider because these are the same morons who believed little Tina was ripping apart rib cages. Least she had a trial, unlike Joe, who's about to be lynched on the spot before the monster rescues him, as we need the doctor to help make a bride. He rips apart a few villagers, then carries Joe back to the workshop where Victor wants to use his car as a power supply. Frankenstein even read a copy of the modern Prometheus, which you would think would be a warning, but he's gone mad with guilt. He just has his monster persuade Joe to help run cables to a weather vane on the roof while he prepares Elizabeth on a table. As they're working to resurrect him a bride, the monster keeps asking Joe who created him, so he says God to shut the creature up. The only god this guy has is science, as he connects a cable to a prototype of his planet-destroying laser and directs it at the workshop. When asked if he has a soul, Victor says those are crutches for weaker men, then continues to resurrect the bride of Frankenstein. Lightning strikes the tower and we get some sparkly effects before Elizabeth reanimates, much to the enjoyment of the monster. The laser also powers up and Joe says this cold line about introducing them to his monster as it sends them through another rift. Frankenstein's entire workshop and everybody inside are sent into the future and wake up on a snowy mountain like Aladdin. Among the rubble of his home, Victor threatens to shoot Joe when Elizabeth wakes up, so the monster goes to check on her. The bride doesn't like the look of her groom, but he slowly entices her over until she sees Victor and recognizes him as her husband. She looks at what she's become, then as Victor tries to shoot the monster, she directs the bullet into her own heart. The angry creation, now a bachelor, once again picks Victor up over his head and breaks his creator's spine. He then wanders off into the snow while Frankenstein's final words are telling Joe to destroy his creation, which should have been said earlier. The monster hunter grabs the gun and trudges off into the frozen wasteland, where he comes across the entrance of a bunker. Inside, Joe finds it filled with high-tech equipment, which makes him happy to see, as these are all products of his own creation. The monster makes a dramatic entrance and says that Joe's laser destroyed the world while this place powers the last remaining city of survivors. Not sure where he learned that, but Joe don't care and shoots the monster in the head before it tries to look for any more sympathy. It just opens back up its stitched together eyeballs, so Joe shoots it again, but the monster rips off its arm and uses it like a club. He chases Joe around the bunker, but he finds a laser that's controlled by the clapper and waving around your hands like a weirdo. When the monster approaches, Joe activates the device, burning the creature alive, whose last words are that you can't kill me. It dies, much to the monster's own confusion, while Joe leaves the bunker and emerges outside of mankind's last refuge. As he walks towards the futuristic city, we hear Frankenstein's creation name drop the title that he is now unbound. And the movie ends.